Welcome, Fibre friends. You've stepped into Spellbound Stitching, where I seek to weave a little magic into every stitch, twist and skein. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Today is Saturday, the 28th of June 2025. My name is Kat, and I'm coming to you from Upper Hutt in Wellington, New Zealand. I'm an avid crafter, dabbling in knitting, crochet, cross-stitch, patchwork, dressmaking, baking, and any other craft you probably could think of. I'm also an indie dyer and have just started my journey into knit and crochet pattern design. By day, I work full-time in cybersecurity, and you can find me on Ravelry as Broomstitch or on Instagram and Facebook as Broomstitch NZ. You can check out my online store at broomstitch.co.nz and contact me by email, DM on social media, or by commenting below on this video. So before we dive into my enchanting podcast, I'd love it if you could, if you like what you see here today, give this video a like, and if you're really interested in my content, consider subscribing to my channel. This just helps the creative cauldron keep bubbling and sends ripples of support so that other viewers are able to find me. My whole intention with this podcast has been, there's 4 goals that I have, but I'll just go over one of them for today. One of my main goals is to inspire other crafters and encourage them to infuse their crafting with a bit of intention and positivity. For me, I know crafting is my safe space, and when I'm making something, I like to pour all my love, blood, sweat, tears, swearing even, into my projects. But I think it's particularly nice when you are crafting an item for somebody else. I believe that you infuse that project with all the love that you've got for this person that you're creating for. So I guess just being a little bit more mindful when we're crafting is not only positive to ourselves, but also positive to the receiver if you happen to be knitting or crafting or crocheting for somebody else. I had planned to film this a few weeks ago, but unfortunately I got sick, and I've only just actually properly recovered my voice and myself. Today's probably the first day I'm not feeling absolutely exhausted, so I apologize for leaving you all hanging for so long. I did go up to Auckland to attend Woolfest, but I will talk about that a little bit later. One thing I did want to mention is I'm going to switch up the order of events a little bit today because I want to talk about an upcoming make-along, or currently in progress make-along rather. You may have seen on social media that we are hosting a great Kiwi make-along, and that means we are celebrating our local talent and fibre by creating a project with New Zealand yarn, New Zealand fibre, or by using a New Zealand designer's patterns, or both if you really want to go hard. It's running from the 1st of June, so it's already in progress, and it's ending on the 31st of August, so there is still 2 months of the make-along going. The rules are no whips, fresh cast-ons only with the intention of making them for the make-along, please. It includes any kind of project, so that could be knitting, crochet, weaving, felting, spinning, whatever you can think of that uses some sort of New Zealand fibre. Now that could mean New Zealand milled fibre, or New Zealand grown fibre, New Zealand dyed fibre, commercial or indie or private, however, you know, whatever you think fits, as long as there's some element of New Zealand fibre in there, or a New Zealand pattern, so that could be a sewing pattern, felting, weaving, whatever. Prizes will be drawn for finished objects, and there's 2 ways that you can enter. You can either use the hashtags on Instagram, which is hashtag kiwimal or hashtag kiwimal2025, or there is a Ravelry thread that has been set up by Merino from Strawberry Patches, who was the instigator of this whole thing. One of the coolest parts about this make-along is that it's a group of 10 New Zealand podcasters have got together to host this make-along, initiated by Merino. So I'll give you a bit of a rundown of who else is included. We've got myself, I'm sponsoring the make-along. Alana from Black Cat Knitting Company, who's a New Zealand designer, but she also has a yarn store in Parnell called Lupine Wool Co. Jill and Kylie from Cup of Tea and a Yarn Knitting Podcast. And Kylie also recently started up a business called The Sock Engineer, if you want to check that out on Instagram. Lisa from Unwind and Knit With Me. She also has a podcast and an online store. Bex from the Rebecca Ann Knits podcast. Sue and Vanessa from the Yarns from the South podcast. Bibi and Stephen from Just Another Knitting podcast. And Donna from Blind and Knitting. So each of us are contributing a prize to the make-along, but we've also had a lot of other fantastic Kiwi makers and designers reach out to us to offer some prizes. So there's heaps of prizes for finished objects up for grabs. And some of us will be shipping internationally, so there are some international available prizes. So feel free to enter wherever you are in the world, and we're so excited to see what that you make. There's been heaps of interest online so far, so it's been pretty exciting already. It's got me really pumped up, and unfortunately I can't knit as fast as my inspiration would want me to, but we're going to get there. I'm going to include all this information in my show notes below, and you can also find copies of my show notes on my website if you are wanting to find links or more information about anything that I talk about on the podcast today. So with all that said, what I'm wearing, I promised Marina from Strawberry Patches that I would wear the thing that I made in her yarn today. So what I'm wearing is my Burst Shawl by Dominique Trad. I'll take it off so you can have a better look at it. But it comes in one size. It's made in Strawberry Patches yarn. So the two colours that are here are a Unicorn Cake and Blueberry Farm. Now, I saw the Unicorn Cake on Marina's podcast, and I just had to have the colour. Had no idea what I would make with it because it's so far out of my usual. And then when I was browsing her online store, I saw this beautiful purple to go with it. So decided to grab two skeins and then figure out what I was doing, and I found this cool pattern on Ravelry. It's a one size, it's a triangular shawl. I've made it in Marina's Merino DK, which has 226 meters per 100 gram from her online store. The pattern calls for 550 meters, but because I wanted to make mine extra squishy, I made it in a slightly bigger needle, which meant that I did come a little bit short when it came to yarn, so I just reduced the numbers of repeats in the last section. But that's okay, I'm really happy with it, and it's beautiful and squishy and snuggly, and I wore it to work the other day and I got heaps of compliments on it. So it calls for a 4.5 millimeter, but I chose to use a 5, which meant my gauge of 17 stitches and 26 rows was off by a couple of stitches. But that's cool. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I used all of both skeins. I wanted to make sure it was all gone, so I just kept going. It is mosaic knitting, so you can see it is kind of colour work, but also kind of not. Which mosaic means you're only ever knitting with one colour at a time, and you just use slip stitches to pull the colours up onto other rows to give you this cool effect. And it's a lot of garter stitch, so it's very squishy. It's perfect for one tonal and one solid. So the purple is more of a tonal, it's got some blue and some purple in there, and obviously Unicorn Cake is hugely vibrant and fun and loud, and I think that just makes this shawl so exciting, and it's perfect for this beautiful rainy grey day that we're having outside. Makes your day feel less grey when you're wearing so much colour. But of course did manage to squeeze my signature purple in. The pattern has heaps of detail, really good for a first shawl pattern. Has stitch counts at the end of every row and a tick sheet to help you make sure you're staying on track. I started this one on February 21st, 2024 and finished on February 24th, 2024. So it was a really quick knit for me. I do remember when I was knitting this, I was actually off work sick one of the days and sat and watched an entire TV series and just knit on this, and it was nice, easy, mindless knitting for when I wasn't feeling too good. Normally I progress to what's in my teacup, but I don't really have a teacup today. I'm being exceedingly naughty and having a purple V because that's one of my favourites, and my other half kindly bought one for me and left it in the fridge, so I thought, why not? You can always do with a pick-me-up, right? Okay, I've got quite a few things to show this time, but also a few things that I don't actually have with me anymore because I've given them away for gifting. Now, a few episodes ago, you may have remembered that I knit a traveller hat out of Yarn Therapy's Ginger Nutty Merlin 10-ply worsted base. Now to go, I only had 44 grams of yarn left, and I wanted to make some mitts that went with it. So I designed these that I'm calling my commuter mitts to go with the traveller hat, and I've used the same pattern here as the ridges on the hat. So they're just a little short mini mittlet. They don't have a thumb gusset or a thumb. I didn't have enough yarn to do the whole lot. But those are a very cute little set to go with the hat. So that was my first project. It's 10% linen, 90% merino. There's 180 meters per 100 grams, and I managed to get the hat and the mittlets out of both. What I did was I weighed my yarn into 2 even amounts, 22 grams each, and just sort of knitted based on my stone mitts pattern that's free on my website. Cast on the number of stitches and sort of just knit it until I figured I would have the right amount of yarn, started knitting back and forth to make the hole, then rejoined in the round to finish off. It was a serious game of yarn chicken where I did fail on the second mitt, so I had to pull back the first mitt just a little bit to get the yarn that I needed to make them an even size. It worked out in the end. It was a lot of ripping back, but it was a fun experience. If you want to see any more information about any of the projects that I show on the podcast, you can check out my Ravelry. I'm Broomstitch on Ravelry, I've already mentioned, and you can find links to each project in the show notes below. So the next finished object was a DK hat by Ethan Barclay-Ennew, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, of EBE Forever Designs. Now Ethan is a New Zealand based designer from Get Flocked in Christchurch, which is a yarn store, online and brick and mortar store. I used Broadway Premium 100% New Zealand Merino DK, which is 105 meters per 100 grams. And the colour I used was black. I purchased the yarn from Ribbon Rose online, which is a massive store in Auckland. And that made this one of my sort of entries into the kiwimal, because the commuter mitts were my first entry because they were my pattern and Kiwi yarn. The hat was Kiwi yarn and New Zealand based designer. I'm not really entering because I can't win prizes, but I'm really excited to be participating and, you know, being amongst all the hype to go with the make-along. Recommended for the pattern is 3.5 and 4 millimeter needles. I used the 3.5 millimeter needles. It is a 1x1 hat, ribbed hat, and the gauge is 32 stitches per 10 centimeters. There's no row count, but that's okay. You kind of just knit until the right length, so it doesn't really matter. I used 2 50-gram balls. I started it on the 9th of June and finished it on the 10th of June. This was a commission from one of my friends who was struggling to find what he wanted online, so he asked if I would be very kind enough to knit him a hat, and I've knitted him a few things before and he's very knit-worthy, so of course I said yes. There's 2 versions of the beanie, a slouchy or folded brim, a beanie, a slouchy, and you can wear that folded brim or not. So technically there's 8 possible different hats that you can make using this pattern. It has a beautiful square crown shape, a bit like the traveller hat. So it makes this kind of shape when you do the decreases on the top. Yeah, and it was a super quick knit, even though it was in black. And I had heaps of fun doing it for my friend who was really stoked with it and messaged me a couple of days later to say he'd been wearing it while doing his outdoor chores and that it was fantastic and perfect and it was very much what he wanted. So that always makes me feel really good when you've knitted something special for somebody, poured all your love into it, and they get just as much love and use out of it. Makes my heart happy. Okay, the next one I have also gifted, so you'll have to rely on the photos, I'm sorry. But they were some DK weight vanilla socks by the Crazy Sock Lady Designs, and they were in my yarn Broomstitch Half DK, which is 100% New Zealand superwash merino, and there's 220 meters per 100 grams on one of those skeins, and the color that I used was Clairvoyance. Now, I've previously shown my Wild Ivy by Wool and Pine Design that I knit up in that color, and I mentioned that I used 3.2 skeins, so I had 0.8 of a skein or 80 grams left. Didn't know what to do with it. Mum's birthday was coming up, and I'd already made Dad a pair of these socks for Father's Day, so I thought I would make some for Mum, because Mum likes to wear bed socks or just something cozy where she's sitting on the couch. So I thought this would be perfect. And I did get a photo of her toes wearing the socks that night to show me that she did appreciate the gift that she was given, so that was a bit cute. The gauge for the socks is supposed to be 28 stitches. Again, no row information. There's 3 sizes available in the pattern, so there's a small, medium and a large. I made the medium for Dad and he sort of said they were a little bit slouchy, so I made the small for Mum and I went down a needle size. So it recommends 3s and 3.5s in the pattern, but I used 3.25s and 2.75s, and Mum said they fit really snugly. One thing to remember if you are making socks in superwash yarn is that superwash yarn has a tendency to grow. So when you're knitting it and it feels perfect on your foot, just remember it will stretch a little bit. You can put them in the dryer to make them shrink a little bit, but it doesn't shrink a huge amount if you're doing it on cool. Just be careful shrinking anything in the dryer also. But I tend to make anything in superwash a little bit smaller than I think it needs to be, because it does grow a fair bit when you wash it. I love this pattern. Obviously I've used it before. I've got big plans to knit several more socks in this because I love a DK sock. So quick. I started them on the 16th of June and finished them on the 20th of June. There was a day in the middle where I had no knitting mojo and just didn't feel like it, so one day of that I didn't actually knit. So I used that whole 0.8 skein of yarn. I ended up with a 2 gram nugget left at the end, so I'm really stoked to be able to use upper part skein and not have scraps left over. It's got a really good reinforced heel as well that you use slip stitches. It's worked from the top down in the round, so it's a heel flap, turn and gusset style sock. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say about those. My next finished object I do have for you in person, so I can actually show you. So I've made another pair of socks. Now these were my desk knitting socks. You might remember that I have train knitting socks and desk knitting socks for when I'm in meetings at work. So these ones have been sort of languishing on my desk for a wee while, but they're finally done. And these were made for my other half. So that's a size 40 or 8 sock. So they're a little bit big for my blockers, but that's okay. It still does the job. So these ones were knit in Naturally Gallipoli yarn, which is 100% wool, and a percentage of the proceeds get donated to our RSAs in New Zealand for return service veterans. This yarn has 400 meters per 100 grams, and luckily for me we've got small feet, so I do manage to get 2 pairs of socks, one longer, one usually a little bit shorter pair, out of a single ball of yarn. I did these ones with the intention of color matching. You might be able to see that they're pretty close. So the next ones I don't think are quite going to be the same, because I'm going to do what I did with the mitts and weigh the yarn into half quantities and make some socks. I think I might have to do some different heels, toes and cuffs. So for those, the shade was 82445, and I just got the yarn from Spotlight, which is a big box store in New Zealand. Those socks took 54 grams, so I am left with 46 grams for the next pair. I started them on the 31st of March, and I only just finished them this week on the 23rd of June. It's my usual method of knitting a sock tube and then doing a cut-in afterthought heel. I just find that's the easiest when I'm sitting at a desk or on the train, just to go round and round and round, then put the tube in and then insert the heel afterwards. So that's my socks. And the next finished object I am super proud of and super stoked with, and it is one of the things that I'm considering part of the Kiwi Make-Along. And quite a number of us in the Kiwi Make-Along are doing this sweater, but it is the Calypso by Black Cat Knitting Company. So that's Alana's pattern, and I made mine in, it comes in 9 sizes, and I made mine in Spin Cycle dyed in the wool sport 5-ply, which has 183 meters per 100 grams and is 100% American wool, and that's the colored part that you can see, the color changing yarn. It is a luxury yarn, it is rather pricey, and it's pretty special stuff. I bought it when it was on sale. This colorway is called Purse First, because we needed some purple spin cycle in my life. And the main color that I used, Alana calls for a 5-ply or sport weight yarn. She used Rowan felted tweed, I think, in her original pattern, but I've used Outlaw Rhapsody. So that is a possum and merino blend. And because possum's so puffy, it works perfectly well as a sport weight yarn. The colorway for this is Sunset and Space, and that one comes in a 200 meter per 50 gram skein. It's 60% merino, 40% possum, so there's quite a bit of a possum content in this yarn, and it gives the yarn sort of a bit of a brown halo, if you can see that there. But it's so soft, so fluffy, and it keeps the cold at bay incredibly well. We had a really bad frost in Upper Hutt a couple of weeks ago. Can't have been very long. I went to catch the train. Trains were all delayed because the tracks were frozen. So we were all standing on the platform waiting for the train, and the cold did not get through the possum at all. I didn't feel it. I had possum merino fingerless mitts on, a possum jersey, and the only place that I was cold was my legs, because they didn't have possum and merino on them. So I don't know, maybe some pants are on the horizon. So the needles I used were a 3 for the edging and a 3.75 for the body, and that is the recommended size. So the gauge is 23 stitches over 30 rows, and I made the size 3, which is the equivalent of a medium. Now the thing that I'm so proud of is that I made this sweater in 6 days. So unfortunately I did have to take some time off work because I was sick, but that meant I got extra knitting time, which means I completed a whole sweater in 6 days. And I chose to do a long sleeve version, so that's some modification. It's a 3/4 sleeve version in the pattern, and it's got this gorgeous picot edging on the top and picot edging on the bottom. So I chose to do picot edging on the sleeves as well, even though the pattern calls for rib. So yeah, I'm really stoked with how this turned out. I was a little bit precious about using so much of my spin cycle on the top where it was just going to be folded in, so I actually cast on in the Outlaw yarn and did that for the first 5 rows before I made it so that it would be spin cycle on the turn, so you couldn't see the Outlaw. So I've got, yeah, I kind of cheated a little bit, but that's okay. It worked out and it looks great and it keeps me nice and warm, and you would never be able to tell unless I showed you the inside of my sweater. And because it's color coordinated anyway, it doesn't matter. What I really like that Alana did with this pattern is it's got short rows to make the top higher, as you can see, but what she did is do a short row and then do a row in between to make sure there was a smoother transition in the colours. So she's obviously really thought about it, and the geometric flower design is just so beautiful, and it's so much fun to knit up because you just can't wait to see what the next shape's going to be. Normally also I would go up a needle size for my colour work and back down to the recommended for the body or the sleeves, but I found my tension was really good this time and I didn't need to do that, so that's pretty cool. It's a boxy fit, it's not like tight against me, so there's a little bit of positive ease, probably about 10 to 15 centimeters on me, but I couldn't be happier with this sweater, and I highly recommend the pattern. It was really thought out, really well written. It's top down in the round, so you do the round yoke and then you just move into the body. I always like to move into the sleeves, so I did the yoke, got down to where you split for sleeves and did a few more rows, and then my ball of yarn ran out, so I switched to doing the sleeves. I just find it easier when I'm going top down in a sweater to do the sleeves when there's not all the bulk of the body, so that if you're having to try and turn it around, you're not fighting a whole lot of fabric. That's just a little tip that I picked up from Lisa from the Unwind and Knit With Me podcast from many episodes ago. But yeah, absolutely love that sweater, and can't wait to show you what's next. Okay, so you may remember that in my last episode I sort of did a bit of a poll as to which cardigan should I cast on. It was a toss-up between the Springfield cardi, the Winter's Beach cardi, and the Three Seasons cardigan. I did cast on the Springfield cardigan in the DK Port by Dark Harbour Yarns in the glazed beetroot colour, and I got down to splitting for sleeves in the cardigan, and I'd found it so painful, the pattern so far, to understand the charts and where things were going, because it wasn't overly explained and there were a lot of charts in the pattern. I did figure it out in the end, and it did look quite nice, but I decided I didn't actually love the pattern, the flowers in the lace enough to carry on with it, so I frogged it, and I don't plan to make that one for me anytime soon, and not with this yarn because it is precious hand-dyed yarn. So I cast on a totally different cardigan because I still really wanted to use that yarn. I wanted an all over lace cardigan because that's what I'd had in mind for this yarn. And the one that I found was the Sanna cardigan by Rebecca Clow. Now it comes in 10 sizes. I've already mentioned it's in the Dark Harbour Yarns Port DK, which is 100% merino base, which is 228 meters per 100 grams in the colour glazed beetroot. And I purchased that from the Wellington market in June 2024. But this is what we've got to so far. So I have split, it's worked bottom up to keep the lace pattern. So I've done the main body, the front and the back, and I've also picked up and done the neckband and the button bands as well. So now I'm just onto the sleeves. But as you can see, it's got an alternating lace pattern. So there's one panel, two panel, one panel, two panel. So it's a motif that alternates. And it's really beautiful, and it's all separated by a garter band. I'll put a photo up so that you can see. And the shoulders are done with a 3 needle bind off, so it's pretty seamless looking shoulder seam. And nice shaping for the armholes, and the sleeves are worked separately in the round and then attached. So I'm really happy with that. That only took me, I think it was 4 or 5 days to do the main bulk of the work. I don't know why it's showing up so pink on camera, but it's a whole lot more purple in real life. It's actually probably closer to my hair colour, to be honest. My hair's showing up really pink too anyway. So now I'm onto the sleeves. Now this is working in tiny circumference to make the sleeves. You're starting with motif 2 and then working your way up. I'm going to do the long sleeve version, but I'm using my little Chow Gu shorties to do this, and if I'm honest, I find knitting in the round in this smaller circumference, not on DPNs, really painful. So I feel like this is going to take me a little bit of a while to A, find the motivation to do it, and B, I knit a whole lot slower on these tiny little needles. So we'll see, but maybe that'll just turn into a bit of a slow burn. But I'm really happy with the cardigan and I cannot wait to wear it, and I think it's going to look so cute. And I think maybe next week I will pop down to the local yarn store and see if they've got some buttons to match. They usually have gorgeous buttons in their stock. So that's the first new cast on. The pattern says to use a 3.5 and a 4.5 millimeter needle. I've been using a 3.25, a 3.5 and a 4. So I'm using the 4 for the main lace and the 3.25 for the cuff around the wrist, because I like a tighter fitted wrist, and a 3.5 for the rest of the ribbing. Yeah, I'm knitting the size 3 and I started that one on the 14th of June. The next new cast on that I have is just a little free pattern that I've cast on because one of my friends is expecting a baby, and it is called the Louise by Zioty, and it only comes in 2 sizes, a 3-month and a 3 to 6 month. And this is where we've got to. It's just a little singlet with a lace pattern on the top. Oh god, this is fiddly. It's just a little singlet with a lace pattern on the top, and it's got a little button placket at the front, so that'll have some cute little buttons on the lace. And now I'm just at the point where I go round and round and round for the body, and it's edged in moss stitch or seed stitch, one or the other. So you just do moss stitch or seed stitch when you get down to the bottom. And my cute little alpacas from Merino at Strawberry Patches. You may remember when I went to the Wairarapa Wool weekend, I bought some Earth Yarn 16 fingering superfine merino from the Yarn Queen, so that's what I'm using this for. And it is the colourway BL70, which is a dark blue. I'm using a 3mm needle. The gauge says it should be 27 stitches, but I think I'm getting 26 stitches, but that's okay. I'm doing the size 3 to 6 month because I figure babies don't tend to stay in newborn stuff very long, and being that it's like a little vest, he could either wear it as just a singlet or he could wear it as a vest over the top of like a onesie. So that's one little project. I started that one on the 20th of May, so I've just sort of been going with that. It's kind of been my car knitting that I've left in the car just for if I end up somewhere that I'm stuck and I need some knitting. But I might pull it out just to finish it and swap it out for some socks. Okay, so whips. For this same baby, I've also been knitting a baby blanket, and it is the Sea of Dreams by Aimee Alexander. Comes in 3 sizes, a snuggly, a cot, and a bassinet size, I think. I'm making the cot size out of DMC 100% pure baby merino superwash. Needs to be superwash because my friend needs to be able to chuck it in the washing machine, because unfortunately she lives in Melbourne and I can't offer to wash it for her. There's 225 meters per 100 grams, and I'm using the natural cream color. And I've made quite a bit of progress, done 3 of the 5 repeats. So this is intended to be one of those heirloom baby shawl type blankets. So 2 more repeats. It's got a similar picot edging to the sweater I just showed you, and there's a lace border and moss stitch border. So initially this was the one I wasn't really in love with when I first cast it on and wasn't really sure about it, but I finished the first pattern repeat and decided, yeah, no, that was what I wanted, and kept going with it, and I'm so glad that I have, because I think it's absolutely adorable. So that's a slow burn project. It's kind of been put on hold a little bit while the Kiwi makealong inspiration hit, but I am going to have to pick it up again soon because the baby is due early August, which means I've only got a month left to do the last 2 pattern repeats and finish off the borders and get it washed and blocked and sent over to Australia. So that's the progress on the baby blanket. and I guess I'm going to show progress on some of my socks that are my train knitting, but just because I think they're really cool. So these two tubes are done, and that is in a Shawl wool Zioty Crazy. I can't remember the colour, sorry. I use a 2mm set of DPNs to do my tubes. Cast them on at the top, work down to the toe, then I graft the toe together, and then I'll put in an afterthought heel. Now I haven't put in the afterthought heel on these ones yet because I'm waiting to see what happens with the second pair and how those colours work out, to decide whether I'm going to use any scraps of the Shawl Zioty or whether I'm going to just insert some other heel in those. But yay, I'm finally going to have some purple socks. But I think this is really, really pretty as well. Yeah, so that's just more vanilla socks, and I thought you'd like to see the pretty colours. Okay, next thing that's in my queue. So, did try one of the cardigans that was on the maybe dream knitting queue last time, didn't work out, cast on a completely different cardigan. The Andrea Maori Winter's Beach, the yarn that I have for that is Shetland wool, so I'm going to wait, I think, and cast that one on once the make-along is done. So what that means is the next one up is the 3 Seasons cardigan by Wool & Pine Designs. So that one has 10 sizes available, and I plan to make it in some more of the Yarn Therapy Merlin 10% linen, 90% merino, 180 meters per 100 grams worsted base. So this colorway is called St. Beryl's, and it was part of a collection that she did. The pattern calls for 4.55 and 5mm needles. The pattern says that you need to see the pattern for full gauge information, so I'm guessing there's some sort of trickery or magic there that Wool & Pine has done to make sure that you pick the right size. But I'm thinking I'll make the size 2, which is a 43.5 inch bust, which is the equivalent of 98 centimeters, because I want this to be reasonably fitted. I don't want it to be a big bulky cardigan, but it is an all over cable design. Yeah, I think this will be absolutely perfect for it. It looks kind of similar tones to the example they've got in the blue there, so I'm hoping it'll work out, but I'm really looking forward to casting this one on. I will finish the Sanna cardigan before I cast on the next one, but the intention is this is the next one in the queue. Alternatively, or after I cast on that cardigan, I am feeling a little bit of colour work. So I was thinking that I would make the Instant Crush by Locatelli. So that is a 10 sizes available pattern that's all over colour work, and it's made using 2 strands of lace fluff held together. So I bought a bunch from Prosper Yarns quite a while ago when this pattern came out with the intention to make it, and I just haven't got there yet. So I'll show you the colours that I've got. The first one is Lulu, and that is going to be my main colour, and it's this beautiful rich purple, which is showing up a little bit more pink than it is in real life. The second colour I've got is called Tidal, and that is a beautiful teal to go with it as a contrast. Now these are 30% silk, 70% mohair, dyed in New Zealand, so they'll count for the Kiwi make-along. The third colour I have is Blossom, which is this beautiful soft pink. And the fourth colour that I have is called Tusk, which is a cream. So those are the 4 colours that I have. I've got another skein of the purple for the main colour. So that's my intention for the Instant Crush by Locatelli. So we'll see if colour work or cables wins out for what's next for the Kiwi make-along, because both of those are New Zealand yarns. So the pattern calls for a 3 and a 4mm needle. The gauge is 19 stitches and 25 rows, so it seems pretty like it would fly off the needles, and the excitement of colour work moving through the different sections might really keep me engaged. So that's also an exciting prospect. I plan to make a size 3 in that one as well. It is important to note that mohair silk doesn't have an incredible amount of stretch or bounce, so you need to pick a size that's pretty close to exactly what you want. The pattern recommends that it should be worn with no or slightly negative ease, so that's why I'm picking the size 3. Now the third thing that I've chosen to cast on, which actually might end up being the car knitting, it sort of bleeds into acquisitions a little bit, but it is the Firebird scarf by Black Cat Knitting Company. Now this is Alana's version of those little skinny scarves that you wrap around your neck just to add a little bit of warmth around your neck. It is technically one size, but it is adaptable, so it depends how long you want to go for or how you want to do it. There are 3 versions inside the pattern for 3 different yarn weights for I think it's fingering, DK and worsted, or Aran weight maybe. And it is a bias asymmetrical triangle, and so because there's 3 different yarn weights in the pattern, it also can use 3 different size needles, which is a 4, 5 or 6 millimeter, which suggests to me that this is going to be a really nice squishy garter scarf. So I mentioned that I went to Woolfest, and one of the things that I acquired while I was there is this gorgeous alpaca yarn. So it's from Nuts About Alpacas, which is Silver Hill Farms, and it's 100% alpaca, and oh my gosh, I wish you could feel how soft this is, and the beautiful mauvey colors that are there. But I mean, look, it can't even stand up. It's super floppy. It's so soft, and I imagine the drape is going to be incredible. And from what I understand, our 100% alpaca is not necessarily great for making sweaters because it tends to drop or stretch out a little bit, but I figure a little accessory around my neck with this beautiful soft yarn will be just perfect. And of course I felt it at Woolfest and I just had to have it. So the colour is a multi, it just says colour number 26, so I imagine she just has a fair bit of fun throwing colour at these in the dye pans. So they're grown and spun on her farm. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's my plan. Firebird scarf with this one, super easy, little bit mindless knitting that I could probably just pick up and read where I'm up to easily. So that will also qualify for the make-along because it is New Zealand yarn and a New Zealand based designer. I'm going to do something a little bit different, but new patterns and designers. There's one I really want to feature, and then I'll talk a little bit about something else. But the one that I really want to mention is this one that I discovered by Elizabeth Nihoniho of Amikahia Knits, and that is the Flourish sweater. It's a DK weight, so it's fingering and lace fuzz held double, and uses a 3.5 and 4 millimeter needle with a gauge of 22 stitches over 32 rows. Now each little lace motif on the front of the sweater represents a flower blooming, so it's quite a lovely analogy there with the flourishing and the flowers. It's got set-in sleeves, it's worked from the bottom up, there's lace on the front but there's stockinette on the back, so it will be nice and warm. There's a black button placket up on the left shoulder, and the pattern includes photo instructions on how to set things in and how to pick up the sleeves, etc. It's got little short rows at the top of the sleeve to make a sleeve cap, so to give it a really nice shape, and I just think it would be a lovely probably spring knit for me actually. So I'm gonna have a hunt through my stash, see if I've got anything suitable otherwise, but it's definitely going in my queue. I think this is a beautiful design, one of her many beautiful designs. So check out Elizabeth's designs if you haven't had a look. She does some gorgeous stuff and she's a Kiwi designer, so it would qualify for the make-along. So the other thing that I wanted to point out is not necessarily a single designer, but Julie from Wool on Wheels, who operates a wool truck that drives the length of New Zealand and puts on mini yarn shows at different smaller centres in New Zealand that don't have access to the larger events or necessarily have access to some of the Kiwi yarns that she stocks. She's also done this amazing thing on her website where she's put up a directory of where to find New Zealand yarns and yarn stores and where to find New Zealand patterns and designers. So if you go on her website using the link that I've provided, it gives you lists of local yarn stores, online yarn stores, and lists of New Zealand designers that you could find some of the patterns to do for the make-along. I just think it's a really cool resource that Julie's spent a lot of time putting together and maintaining, and she's got a form that you can fill out if you feel like somebody or a store or a designer is missing. So yeah, use those resources, they're fantastic. Right, so I guess that takes us on to acquisitions. There's quite a bit to go through because I attended Woolfest, like I mentioned, and I didn't want to get sweater quantities necessarily because I can get those when I need them, when I've got a project in mind. I kind of wanted to look at some yarns and purchase some yarns that I haven't purchased before, or places that I haven't known about before. And I sort of achieved that in a majority of ways, but I did buy something off Merino from Strawberry Patches just because, and it is this amazing sock yarn called Iris in Bloom, and it is on her zebra DK base, which is an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, which makes it perfect for socks. So hence my plans to knit some DK socks, because I get a pair of DK socks out of one skein of yarn for me because I've got small feet. Yeah, so it's super squishy. As you can see, it's quite bulky and lofty, but my plan is to make DK socks out of that one. And also from Merino, I purchased this gorgeous little pin, which is a little dinosaur knitting a sweater for my other half, who has recently got into knitting. They were crochet and Tunisian crochet before, but now have just started knitting. So I got them some little goodies when I went to Woolfest, which I will show you. But that's the first one, the DK sock yarn from Merino. Next up, I guess I have previously also purchased from Happy Go Knitty, but she had an amazing Woolfest colorway. So she does souvenir yarns for the shows that she attends. So this is the Woolfest 2025 color, and it just matched me. I was wearing my glow hair shawl that I had just finished making. It was its debut outing, and I couldn't walk past it. So this is on her second base, which is a 65% superwash merino, 20% silk, and 15% yak base. And it's a bigger skein, so it's 120 grams, which means there's 480 meters on here. So I don't know what I'm going to cast on with this, but I cannot wait to use it because it's so soft. And the colors are just so me. So thank you, Helene. Up next, we will go with the Miss Peacock's yarn. So Miss Peacock's was on the I must have list when I attended Woolfest because she does amazing self-striping yarns. Some of them come in gobstopper balls and some of them just come in skeins. But this one is the Mauve May colorway, so you can see it's got beautiful mauve stripes, but it's also got cream and speckled stripes. So that's pretty cool to add to my growing collection of self-striping yarns. So this one's 80% merino, 20% nylon, and it's a fingering weight, so it'll be 2mm sock tubes on this one. And I think I will probably look at finding a mini or some scrap yarn to do matching heels and toes, so I can get two longish pairs out of these. That's super exciting. Managed to get my hands on a Mrs. Peacock, and it's so squishy and soft, and her color depth is just gorgeous. So I'm really excited to see how these knit up, and then I've promised myself once I've knitted up, then I'm allowed to buy another one. But we have to get through some of the sock yarn that I required because now I've got too many. Next one, Dye Studio 54. I bought two from her, and that I bought the colorways Tweak and Atlantis. So this one's Tweak, and you can see all the gorgeous purples and pinks and sparkles and greens in there. It just reminded me of a beautiful garden in bloom. And to make it really pop, because it's got some really dark patches on there, I'm going to pair it with this Atlantis colorway on the same sparkle base. So that's 70% merino, 20% nylon, and 10% silver stellina. So I'm going to make a t-shirt out of that. So it'll be a summer knitting project. And I think I did find a pattern that I'm going to use, but I can't remember what it is at the moment. Yeah, I spent ages sitting and chatting, and the whole time I was standing chatting, I was staring at this one, and I said it just needs to come home with me, but I need to pair it with something. And there was another colorway that would melt beautifully into this, but I decided I wanted to go high contrast. So I'm thinking maybe a color work of some description. Yeah, so that's exciting. That's a summer project. I also mentioned that my other half has recently got into knitting, so I thought that I would treat them to some special yarn and a project bag at Woolfest. So I got this gorgeous yarn from Spindler's Treasure. Now this is hand spun, so it really is treasure. And it's a mixture, so there is silk in here, there's merino in here, and there's all sorts of other things. I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of a gold sparkle, and there's a little bit of an orange fuzz halo, but isn't it just gorgeous? So that one is 12 wraps per inch, so roughly a Aran weight, I guess, and there's 101 grams here, 255 meters, so actually that's more like DK. Yeah, how gorgeous is that? This is their colors. So I also found a gorgeous project bag from the Woolly Hive, which is Judy, and she hand makes project bags, and I got this to go with it. So it's just a little, I mean, you might be noticing a theme here, oranges and reds and golds, but isn't this gorgeous? It's hand woven recycled sari silk fabric that she's turned into a project bag. And sewn little buttons on and added some matching cording. I think there is a project in here, so we'll dig that out before I show you the inside. And the inside is lined with this gorgeous recycled silk, and there's a little pocket to match. So you can fold that one down and use it as a bucket on the table and have your project sitting in there to pull it out. But also it's really handy just to, you know, and take it on the go with you. So that's ended up as, I think, their desk knitting project at the moment. So yeah, they were very, very stoked to be receiving some little goodies from Woolfest. They didn't get to come with me, but they are going to come with me to Fibretron, so that's exciting. I also got a couple of little bits from James from Joy of Yarn, which are these cute little mushroom stitch markers, because another of my obsessions aside from purple is mushrooms. So we had to have some mushroom stitch markers, and because my name is Cat and I get a bunch of cat jokes all the time, I figured I should have a cat shaped yarn ball with some knitting needles. I'm pinning all these little pins that I get to my knitting bags so that they just bring me so much joy. It's like jewels for your project bags. And lastly, from Woolfest, I got myself some fibre, because my spinning journey, I'm hoping, is going to take off sometime soon. I just have to get around to yanking my wheel out. But I got this beautiful from Fibre to Go braid, which is called In the Shade, so it's a black rainbow. Fibre to Go was on my wish list to purchase from. So there's 100 grams here, that's 70% merino and 30% silk. And look at the gorgeous jewel colours in there. So I'm going to have to figure out how to spin this to get the best use out of the colours, so I might have to do a little bit of learning before I tackle that one, but it was so pretty I couldn't leave it. And the other fibre that I got was from Artemis Fibre, and it is these lovely colours. I literally walked straight up to the stall and went, that one please, because I just had to have it. And I think it's really creative how she puts them on these skewers to make them like a big flat cake. Look at the purples. So again, 70% silk, 70% merino, 30% silk, and I think I'm going to have to do a little bit more learning when it comes to plying so that I get the best use out of these beautiful colours and don't muddy them. And the last little acquisition I'm going to show you was a gift from my daughter. She went to a craft fair with her grandma and she bought me this cute little tin with mushrooms on it, and I have been using it to keep all my project progress keepers and all my little stitch markers in. that are not my basic stitch markers. So anything that's got like a cute little something. It's been living in my little purple mushroom tin. And that is all of my acquisitions. And I guess the next time I see you, maybe I will have been to Fibretron, so there'll be just probably as big a haul there. I'm not going to do an indie of the episode because I've shown off so many different brands and fibres that you guys will probably want to go and check out. But if there is anybody that you want me to do a deeper dive into, please let me know, and I will feature them on one of my episodes. I've already done the upcoming events at the beginning of the podcast, talking about the Great Kiwi Make-Along, so please participate. We would love to see what you've decided to do to promote New Zealand fibres and designers. One thing, I usually do a crafter's tip, and my other half I've mentioned is wanting to get into knitting and they want to try to learn socks, and some of the questions they've been asking have been really interesting. So like, is top down or toe up better? So I kind of told them it depends. A lot of patterns do both versions, but quite a few are one or the other. And it kind of depends what you're more comfortable with. Some will vehemently say they want to do toe up, and others will say vehemently they would like to do toe down, cuff down only. And some will say they love doing socks on magic loops, and some will say that they love doing socks on DPNs. I'm firmly in the DPN category because I'm not good at not getting a ladder down the side of my socks when I'm doing magic loop. But they have proven with making their latest projects that they are much better than me at magic loop, and they don't end up with a ladder. So they want to try doing magic loop. Now I suggested that maybe doing a tube first. So that doesn't matter if you do toe up or cuff down. But the point in doing a tube is you don't have to be exact with knowing when to start doing your heel. Or your flap and gusset. So the idea is you measure your foot and 2 inches, you measure your whole foot, and then you take away 2 inches for the heel, and then you measure the sock, and that's where you cut in to put your heel in. So it's a lot more forgiving in terms of doing it that way. It's the same for me when you're doing a proper sock with a heel, flap and gusset. This one isn't, but we'll just use it to talk about. Is you can do the leg to where you want it, then you can put your heel in, and then you can start doing your foot, and you can try on your sock as you go to figure out how long you need to make the foot of your sock, because you can see where you need to start the toe. If you're doing toe up, you need to be a lot more accurate with where you're going to set in your heel. So it's just how confident you're feeling, really. Like I said, I prefer to do the tube and put in the heel because it's just easier to do mindlessly knit on the train. I don't have to worry about where I'm up to, or you know, sit there listening to my audiobook, knitting away, and realize I've gone too far, and I probably should have started the heel or the gusset 20 rows ago and then have to rip back. So I guess it's entirely up to you how you want to do your socks. I'm not a sock expert. I've only just started my sock journey this year. There's plenty of other more experienced sock knitters out there, I'm sure. But that's kind of the tip that I will give you. If you're starting socks, maybe look at doing tubes and then putting in an afterthought heel. I use the Kirby Worby method. You can find a video for how to do that on YouTube. And I find it gives me the least gap when you do the corners on this part of the heel. But yeah, it's really up to you, whatever you feel most comfortable with. But I think we're going to start cuff down for teaching socks, because that seems to be what we're most comfortable with. Okay, if you have any questions about socks, I can try and answer them, or I can maybe point you to some resources that I found really useful. Feel free to leave me a comment below. Right, I also usually do a bit of a cybersecurity tip. in my videos. And last time I talked about phishing, and we're all very familiar with email phishing, where you get spam emails in your inbox that tell you they want you to do a thing, click here, etc. But what you might not be as familiar with is SMS or text message phishing, or vishing, which is voice phishing. I was talking to my mum the other day, and she mentioned that she got a text that looked suspicious. When I had a look at the text, I said, no, it definitely looks suspicious, because it just came from one of those 4-digit numbers that can be a push notification type text message. And she wondered whether that indicated it was more safe or not. No, it's not. So sometimes I'll get text messages that say something like, hey, it's New Zealand Post here, click on this link to release your package. And now that is definitely a suspicious looking text message, and particularly if I'm not expecting a parcel. But what I would recommend is don't ever click the link. Contact your local branch, for example, if it is a post issue, or contact New Zealand Post directly. Type in their website into your browser, don't ever click a link. Contact the company by looking up their number separately. Don't ever phone the number that is provided in a text message. Verify that you're getting the right number by looking it up, either in your contacts or online. Because what can also happen with an attacker is they can insert a fake phone number, and then you think you're ringing the legitimate phone number like 1NZ or Spark support, and what you're actually doing is you're calling the attacker, the phisher. Another thing that they can do with voice phishing is obviously spam phone calls. So they can phone you up anonymously and say, hey, there's a problem with your computer, we're from Spark support, and we need you to turn your computer on and go and do these things. Highly unlikely they are from Spark support or whoever, or HP support. I would just recommend hanging up. And if there is an issue, it's not likely to be detected over your internet connection. So not only can they get you to do things via text messages or by phoning you in a spam call, what they can also do is siphon money off your account by making you stay on the phone call for a long period of time. So if you think a phone call is suspicious, I'd just hang up. So to reiterate, if you get a text message from a company you're not sure about, contact them directly by looking up their contact information. Don't ever click on a link or phone a number that's included in a text message. If you get a phone call that you believe is suspicious, don't engage with them and just hang up, because you're going to save yourself a world of pain. If there is a genuine problem, then I'm sure it will surface, or if you contact the company or your provider directly, they'll be able to give you more information. But in an effort to keep yourself safe, it's much better to be a bit rude and hang up than it is to have your bank account siphoned or your phone account siphoned because a scammer has contacted you. If you've got any questions about cyber anything, feel free to send those through as well. I'm not an expert on all things cyber, but I might have some information or might be able to point you in the direction of some resources that could help. There are organisations set up to help people in New Zealand, such as NetSafe, and they've got heaps of resources on their website if you want to go and check them out too. Now, normally I feature some sort of skein or a colourway that I have in my shop, but I wanted to feature something a little bit different today. And I'm not sure if people know, but I actually sell stitch markers on my website. So I've got a few different kinds of colours of these stitch markers, and they come on a little card attached to a little ribbon, and they've got some lovely little whimsical beads. And there is a different selection of these rings that are good for stitch markers, and some of the lobster clasps which are good for progress keepers. My stitch markers are all made of glass beads or semi-precious stones. So these ones, for example, there's a little glass mushroom on that one and some faceted glass beads. This one's got an aquamarine on it and some beautiful frosted glass on this one. This one has an amethyst and an obsidian. Some of them have tiger's eye, some of them have pearls, some of them are a mixture. But yeah, there's listings for stitch markers on my website if you want some jewellery for your knitting. There's a couple of other miscellaneous bits and pieces on my website, but yeah, these are really lovely, and I honestly couldn't have enough stitch markers. These ones are really good for beginning around markers because they're quite different compared to or having these progress keepers. I don't know if you know, if you don't know what a progress keeper is, it's something that you clip onto your knitting when you start knitting. So when you finished your knitting section, you can see how far you got. And that could be a good way to time yourself, to see how many rows you can do in an hour or whatever the case may be. Okay, so that's all for my shop update. I usually also talk a little bit about books I'm reading. I've been tackling some bigger ones lately. I mentioned on my previous podcast that I had started The Daughter of No Worlds, and I finished that one, and I've also just finished The Children of Fallen Gods, which is the second book in the series by Carissa Broadbent, which means I'm on to the last book of the series. I've been listening to them on Audible, so they're audiobooks, and the next one, Mother of Death and Dawn, is 21 hours, so that one might take a wee while to get through, but they are such good books. They are high fantasy, a mixture of fae and humans and magic and regular people. Some of it's a little bit heartbreaking. There is, it is in the midst of a war, and there is slavery which they're trying to end, and obviously people aren't always kind to each other, so there's some pretty horrific things that go on in that, but they are fantastic books that have kept me engaged and really excited to find out what happens next every time I pick it up to listen to. So I'd highly recommend those, and they've gone on my other half's reading list after hearing me rave about them so much. I've just got to the end of the second book, as I said, and I'm emotionally invested and quite frankly raging at what just happened. So I can't wait to get into the next book to find out how all these wrongs are going to be righted, fingers crossed, and see how our heroine and hero manage to pull through. So very excited to see where it goes, and I can see why it is a 21-hour book, because there is a lot to unpack and finish and round out. And the level of detail in the books isn't so much that you get bored listening to how much they're describing, but there's just enough so that you feel like that you're immersed in the experience of being in this other world. And it honestly sounds like a place that I would like to visit if it truly existed. So yeah, I will have hopefully a review on the third book for you next time. I also do a bit of a podcast review, and I've mentioned 9 other podcasts earlier in the episode, but I'm sort of trying to go through them in the order that I discovered them. So next up is Sue and Vanessa from Yarns from the South. They're both based in Invercargill. Sue was originally from the UK. Vanessa is wholeheartedly Kiwi, I think. But what I would say about the energy that those two bring is it's organic, friendly, unabashed fun. And you feel like you're hanging out with two besties. It's just enjoying the banter, the little insights into their everyday lives, which is really cool, and their family dynamics, their travel plans. They do this reading corner, which you get really excited when they sing their little theme song, and they do really, really good book reviews and podcast reviews and TV show reviews that they've been watching while they've been crafting. There's usually always a pair of socks on the go for Vanessa, and Sue's recently done some amazing colour work jerseys. I think she did the Framed by Andrea Mowry was the last one that I saw. But yeah, those two have a great sense of humour, There is occasionally a little bit of swearing in their podcast, but I think that just adds to the authenticity of them. So I wouldn't recommend it if you're overly sensitive about that, but if you're looking for a good time and a whole lot of fun and some bright yarns and just, it kind of feels like a warm, cozy hug, their podcast. So I'd highly recommend those two if you're here for a good time. Normally I would give a little bit of a life update, but I've been sick for 3 weeks, so not a lot has happened, honestly. I did get some news about my job at work, and I am going to have to reapply for my role, and there isn't enough roles available for everybody that's currently in the position, so it might mean a change for me later in the year. We just have to wait and see. I'm not making any decisions or moves until I've got more information in September, so it's still a waiting game for me. Some might complain about it being a long, drawn-out process, but I'm more grateful that it just gives me time to process and figure out what I'm doing. Went up to Auckland for Woolfest and had a really fantastic time. Got to chat with a whole lot of people I've only met online. Got to see and reconnect with some old friends, so that was amazing. I did see one of my primary school teachers pull into the parking lot, but I didn't actually catch her at Woolfest, so Mrs. Hatful, if you're watching from Warkworth Primary, hello. But we are heading up to Fibretron end of July, so that's pretty exciting. I don't know if I'll record before then or after then, just have to see what happens. And I've done session 4 out of 6 on the back tattoo. So the next appointment's on the 13th of July, and then he's going away to see some family over in Europe. So he's going to be gone for 6 weeks, which means it's not actually going to be finished until September. And I kind of like to hold off on showing it until it's all done so that it makes sense. If you're not interested in seeing it on the podcast, it will just be a photo. I'm not going to be taking my shirt off to show my back. Please let me know if it's not something you're into, and I won't show it. Aside from that, I have put out a tester call for my Scaith cowl, which is this one. There is a lined and an unlined version, and there is a flat band and a rolled band version. So that's out for testing now. If you're interested in testing, there is a form available to fill out on my Instagram. I should probably also put it in the show notes on my website as well. But if you're interested in testing, it's a cabled cowl worked in the round from the bottom up, and it has a drawstring that's optional as well. And the test for that's going for a month. So if you're interested, that's open to testing, which means the pattern should be released at the end of July. So that's pretty exciting. But in final exciting news, I'm going to combine this with the question for our audience that I usually do at the end, but I've managed to reach 100 subscribers on YouTube. So if you've made it to the end, thank you very much. But also, I'm going to be doing a little gift for one lucky subscriber. If you could leave me a comment below with which section of my podcast you like the most and are getting the most out of or enjoy the most, or if there is something in here that you're not particularly fond of, I'd like to hear some feedback from you on the podcast. So you can leave a comment below and I will be drawing a winner from those comments and announcing that probably not on my next podcast, but the one after. So I'll probably do it the beginning of August, just so we're not lining up entirely with the end of the make-along. But yeah, if you're keen to enter, leave me some feedback. And thank you very, very much to everybody who has subscribed. I know there is a lot of content out there, and the fact that you are choosing to spend some of your precious time with me, listening to me talk about all my fibre and yarny adventures, I really do appreciate it, and I have loved how much interaction I've had with this community through this channel, whether that be in person at Woolfest for a few people that came up and said hello, or whether that is through your comments. I really love hearing from everybody, and I do endeavour to get back to everybody, so thank you for creating this little community with me here. So I guess on that note, that's all for today. I hope you've been inspired by something that you've seen here, and thank you for choosing to spend that time with me. May your yarn never tangle, and may your projects always enchant. Remember, a little magic goes a long way. Happy crafting, everyone.